It's also, the very, very obvious thing is the entertainment and escapism. They've got supernatural powers, so we're attracted to that. This is a really good one. There's a lot of in the vampires, a lot about vampires falling in love with humans and vice versa.
Yes.
Well, that's very much Romeo and Juliet. It's the forbidden love.
Yes.
The forbidden love that it makes it more alluring and attractive.
That's an interesting one, because if you go back, say, 20, 30, 40 years ago, people, like even cross-culture marriages and different age marriages, etc., were frowned upon. Whereas now, there's probably very few situations where people wouldn't accept interracial or whatever marriages. So maybe to be controversial, you have to go for something that's not mortal.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's reflecting our global consciousness, that the fact that we do accept these things more now, and people are different, and maybe it's reflecting that as a form of acceptance. And there's also the fairy tale complex. We've always liked fairy tales. We start off as children with fairy tales, and really these are just fairy tales as we grow older.
I guess they're fairy tales, but again, I was going to say then darker fairy tales, but fairy tales are pretty dark, aren't they? Really, you think Hansel and Gretel were going to be baked and eaten, and what, Snow White was given poison apple by her stepmother. I mean, they are pretty dark, really, aren't they?
Yeah, with a bit of, and usually they end happily.
Oh, definitely.
And most of the vampire books that I've read anyway, like Twilight, ended happily. And,
yes.
So, you're just reinforcing that fairy tale.
And would you say most of the vampire movies, because a lot of, or not movies, sorry, books, but a lot of stories would have that conflict against good and evil, good and bad. With the vampire, these genres, does the good always win?
I think when you get to the end of the series, and with some of them it's taken a really long time to get to the end, and some of them they haven't ended at all.
Yes.
But I think what's interesting is that the vampire's being cast as the hero.
So not the anti-hero.
Yeah. Or the scapegoat, or the one who you feel sorry about.
So it's really as I said, instead of being mortal, but immortal, but it's like it's someone who's different, who's an outcast, and now they're casting them, as you say, as a vampire or fallen angel or whatever. But again, instead of being the person from the different religious background or ethnic group, it now seems to have gone to a different level, because I guess the world overall, not everywhere, but it's more accepting, as you were saying, of people. Yeah. That maybe to make that conflict in books. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting.
Anyway, I'll tell you what, it's been interesting reading over the last couple of weeks to just like reading through things I've found on the internet about what people's opinion about this area of literature is. So.
Yeah. Well, we might have another song, and then we'll come back and see what people are saying about vampires. You're listening to Creative Corner and Book Chat on 88.9 wynFM. You're listening to 88.9 wynFM, the sound of the West, and this is Creative Corner with Book Chat. And this is Denise, and in the studio with me is Jackie. Welcome back, Jackie.
Thank you, Denise.
Now, the songs we just had then were Changes by David Bowie and Counting the Beat by the Swingers, which is a great song. I love that song.
Takes me back.
It does. And today we're talking about, on Book Chat, we're talking about vampires and the phenomenon that has just taken the world since Stephanie Meyer's, but in actual fact it goes back a lot longer than Stephanie Meyer's.
Yeah, it certainly does. Yeah. We were just talking about before we had the songs on, some of the thoughts
on the internet,
about why we take such an interest and why the phenomenon. One really good point that I read about, or article that I read, was about the fact that it's not exclusive, that supernatural theme or the supernatural genre is not exclusive to girls. It actually, addresses, there's a lot of romance associated with it. But in this article, it actually was saying there's a lot of boys reading the series, and they won't admit to reading it, but they're actually reading it.
As in the Stephanie Meyer series, yeah.
But the interesting thing is that we've just received in store what's called a graphic novel. Now,
what is a graphic novel?
A graphic novel is basically a good-looking comic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so we've received the graphic novel of Twilight.
So basically, it's a version of the book,
Yes.
but in a comic
in a
form,
comic format.
but in a more upmarket.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it looks like, just one of those.
Is it in colour? Is it all in
No,
colour?
it's in black and white.
Oh, it's in black and white.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's in a hardcover book, so it looks really pretty.
Yes.
But when things start to come out in graphic novels, it indicates to me that boys are reading it because boys love the comics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny because when you say graphic novel, for me it's like it's graphic as in lots of violence or
Yeah,
something, but
yeah.
it actually means a comic
it's
a
just
comic
the-
book almost version of the novel.
Yeah, it's just basically a new word for comic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And as you were saying that they've actually hardcover now rather than the paper comic. That
Yeah, so
was-
they're sort of things that you can keep, like
Yes.
in our era when we
Yes.
had comics. I remember they were quite cheap.
Yes.
and used to buy them and then throw them out and read the next one unless
and
you were a fanatic.
and they would very easily tear as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Whereas no, this is like a book,
Right.
and yeah, but it's got pictures and word bubbles.
And what sort of price range? Are they in the same sort of price range as the actual
Yeah,
novel? Okay. Yeah. Wow.
So, and you're not reading the whole text.
right.
You're just getting I actually read through this one because I thought it was really interesting to see it in that format. It captures the novel really well, but it's like an abridged version.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And how many pages would you roughly say?
I don't know, maybe about 190 pages.
Okay.
Maybe about like a third to a half the size of the novel.
So if you'd never read the novel, do you think that the comic book versions actually do capture the essence of the novel?
Yeah, they do.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
It seems also to like another way to make money out of the novel as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But it's mainly geared, you say, at the boy market.
Definitely.
Right.
Then there was another article that I read about in the internet, and it was talking about how, I don't know if you've ever heard of manga series, which is a form of Japanese comics.
Okay.
And so it's called Japimation, which was
Okay.
made into like TV.
So they originate as comics and then they're put into animation. on
Yeah,
television,
yeah.
in
A lot of the
series.
themes of those shows were vampires.
Ah.
And what what Western people believe is that because when they came to the West and they were people, took them up and
They're very popular.
yeah, it was a
Yeah.
big hit. So then publishers thought, well, obviously people want to know about vampires. This is a good theme, and we're targeting teenagers, and took it from there.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
so there's quite a bit of interesting thinking about, why this genre.
And why it surfaced, as you say, it goes back hundreds of years in its its origins, but why it's actually surfaced now is interesting, and some of the things you've covered. I just think it's quite interesting that there's such a romance to it now in these novels. Yeah, yeah. Well, so if there's any vampires out there, they don't need to hide anymore. They will be accepted.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I've actually just started reading the True Blood series by Charlene Harris. I was trying to avoid it, but I've just been sucked into it. Too many people read it.
And no cliche meant there.
Sucked in. Yeah. No, but in her novels, the vampires are actually accepted, and they've created a synthetic blood, which they drink instead
so they
of.
don't have to kill people.
Yes,
Or
yes,
turn you
and they're
into a
part of
vampire.
society.
Ah.
Yeah, so very interesting.
That's very interesting too in the acceptance theme. In the acceptance theme, that they're different, but then they've found a way, I guess, to blend into mainstream society.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they go, instead of going along to buy your, bottle of Coke
They
or
get the
something.
synthetic blood. And then apparently the synthetic blood was manufactured in Japan.
Oh, is that right? So do you think anytime soon, I mean, obviously you can't see the future, but do you think anytime soon that this phenomenon is going to die away?
Look, it will. It all goes in fads. And I
Yes.
think once the last of the Twilight movies is out, which
Yep.
is, we've got Eclipse coming up in July.
Yes.
And we've got, then the next one will be Breaking Dawn. I'm not sure when that's coming, probably next year sometime.
Right.
I think once that happens, you already start to see it a bit on the internet. I do quite a bit of blog reading.
Yes.
I trawl a little bit and see what people are saying about stuff, and there's a bit of an anti-vampire movement.
Maybe it's a bit of overload. you
Yes,
think? Yeah.
yeah. So I think that's what happens. That's why it goes in cycles, because it just becomes too commercial, becomes too much, and people just think, oh, I'm over that now.